home. We built it 30 years ago. It's not far from the village where he grew up, right over there. This beautiful little village. It's now also a UNESCO site. There are so many archaeological artifacts and beautiful things to protect. As a child, you weren't that crazy about it because it was so quiet. As an adult, you really do appreciate how beautiful it is and how, you know, that Greek hospitality that people talk about, it's everywhere. It helped us get this story together, that's for sure. And it also because you're part of this place, you know, and people consider you one of their own, even though I do live very far away. My dad built it about 30 years ago. He grew up here, and it was always his dream in one form or another to come back. He never made it back completely. He does spend a lot of time here though, at least 6 months out of the year, and we try to come as much as we can. It's difficult, right? We live in Canada, it's far away, but we do make an effort to come as often as we can. See, like these are ripe orange blossoms and oranges. You can grab a few. Disturbing some big bugs. They grow the oranges. Olives, Greek olives. Greek olive oil is made out of it. Those are all in the back, way back in my dad's land. These are a couple of trees that grow the kind of oranges that ripen early, and he's got a lot more in the back that he harvests in the fall. And there's a lemon tree. It's very idyllic. With a blobby. Maybe it's paper. Yeah. Town square, the platea, is called the Agora. Every village has one, no matter how small. They all have a meeting place where everybody kind of comes to gather. The Greeks are very social. Yeah. So they need their cafes, they need their taverna, and yeah, it's pretty quiet now, but this is where people hang out. An old relic, Byzantine castle built by the French many centuries ago.
Όπου θέλετε εσείς να καθίσετε, εγώ να τα φέρω όπου και να θέλετε εσείς. Όπου θέλετε. Όπου θέλετε.
Okay. People I had never met asked me if I'd started doing my interviews yet. So word gets around. Word gets around. My father's from here, so they knew before I was coming what I was going to be doing. So there's definitely, you know, that village kind of, that small community kind of network, social network going, where everybody pretty much knew what we were up to before we had even started it. Because I was here for a few days before you guys got here, and there was a lot of help from people to organize things and get it together, and even people that I didn't know knew me, right? So they were helping out.
Μα παρέα είσαστε, έτσι.
Ναι.
Θα τα διανεμιστείτε.
Θα πάρω εγώ. Literally with this story, it took this village to get it going because everybody and their brother and their cousin helped, from getting us somebody to play music to finding a family to speak to, you know, getting into the church and filming the service. So it literally took a village. There's a real sense of, it's not even anger, it's almost like a sense of betrayal. People feeling that, how did we get to this point? What happened? To our system, what happened to our government, what happened to our life that we got to this point. So there's this incredible sense of, it's like quiet despair, I would say. You know, people feel depressed because they don't see a future, and or at least they don't see a way out of this very, very bleak present. So it's, you know, Greeks are always pretty much live by the day in terms of philosophy, but, you know, naturally a very optimistic people, and I was really surprised at how consistent that level of kind of defeat and despair is. It's in everybody, and it takes a couple of questions to get it out of them. It's hard. It's right there. It's right beneath the surface. So I find that really striking, because I don't think I've ever come to a place where I hear everybody say everybody say the same thing over and over again, no matter who you speak to. Well, there's my own cousins, who all three are quite well educated, have master's degrees, and one's working on a PhD, and they've had their salaries slashed arbitrarily, just cut in half, and more cuts coming. Another one who just simply can't get a job in her field as an engineer. No one is hiring, no one is building in Greece. There's no growth. So she can't even imagine that she will ever work in her field here. And still others who get, one cousin who worked as a volunteer firefighter for 13 years, and his name came up the list when a posting came up, so he was slotted in as a so-called permanent job. Right now there's no such thing as a permanent job. It's kind of quasi-permanent. And he's making a third of what he was making as a volunteer, and they're expecting, another pay cut. So it's very difficult for people to envision a future, especially young people, to build a future, to build towards something. Even marriage. Marriage is becoming an increasingly dwindling option for so many young people. So all the things that many of us take for granted in terms of simply being able to plan for the future just doesn't exist. It's sad, because you've been in their position, right? It's not a huge age difference. So I think, imagine if I was in this position where, yes, I live in a beautiful place, but I can't see beyond today. And that is what I found I just found that hard to hear, when they were saying that life has now become about getting through the day-to-day. And yes, they're not starving on the street. No, they're not starving on the street. They have a roof over their head. They have their families to gather them in and to help them. It's more of a psychological, spiritual thing, that people just don't, feel that ability to dream. And that, I think, is really sad. I think people outside really do, and I mean outside, I think people in Canada and the US and generally, and even to a certain extent in Europe, think that Greeks have, kind of been living too well, living beyond their means. And some certainly have. Credit is a relatively new phenomenon in Greece, and young people took advantage of it, so you saw a lot of nice cars driving around when that credit became available. But the average Greek, the vast majority of Greeks, weren't making huge, extravagant salaries and blowing it everywhere on taverns and ouzo. Most of them were living a pretty ordinary life, and and working pretty hard for it. So I find that, when you take that average person's life, who was getting by and enjoying life, but hardly living like excessively, and then arbitrarily these people lose most of their livelihood, it's very difficult to kind of reconcile what people think abroad to what the reality really is. These are people with master's degrees who are now making $750 Canadian a month, right? And they still pay taxes, and they still have one of the highest petrol prices in the EU, higher supermarket prices in Greece, 25% higher here than in any other part of the EU. Cost of living is expensive, and wages are going down. So it just seems like a pretty damning situation to live in. It's a beautiful place, and my family's from here, so I feel a sense of family, even if with people I don't know. Immediately they know my dad, and they'll automatically ask how I am and how my children are and how my family is back home, just because they have that. There's a real warmth to the Greeks. That is very genuine, and they include you in their family, even if for those brief moments, right, when they see you so sporadically. So it's lovely coming back. It really is.